A bon nuit for Jalil Bethea in Coral Gables. Career high, and he slams the door on a team that he was heavily recruited to. He closes it out for Miami. A chance to move closer to an ACC berth in the tournament for Syracuse, and the Orange were just outclassed on the road by the conference's worst team.
For the first time in 8 years, Syracuse falls to the worst team in the ACC.
On a bad night to be a Syracuse fan.
Bad night indeed, Andrew. Syracuse Max, they've had some tough results this season, but holy smokes, this is about as bad as it gets.
It's the worst that it gets, AJ. This is the worst loss of this season. I'm going to say this a lot tonight, and I hope a lot of you feel this exact same way. This is an unacceptable loss to the worst team in the ACC and one of the worst teams in college basketball.
We want to hear from you tonight. What do you think about Adrian Autry? What do you think about this team? What direction do they go in now after an horrendous defeat to Miami, 91-84? Syracuse falls. The double overtime, it starts right now.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the double overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Copeland, left wing three! It's good! Quadir Copeland wins the game for Syracuse! For the first time in 1,856 days, Syracuse beats an AP Top 10 team.
Darling drives to his right, puts up a layup. No good, but Copeland with the putback slam. Oh my goodness, Quadir Copeland makes a statement.
And the lows.
Syracuse walked into John Paul Jones Arena looking to make a statement. And Virginia said, oh no you don't. Cavaliers 84, Orange 62, your final.
Well, Syracuse heads into North Carolina and faces its worst loss in its history in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Heartbreaking. The Orange bow out in the second round of the ACC tournament for the second year in a row.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
The expectations should be higher after a few years when Adrian Autry sets that bar, but the bar is still low.
5-star, Donnie Freeman. Yep. I mean, this guy has the tools. I think he could be the truth.
I think Lampkin and the combination of him and Carlos will rejuvenize this team and make them an actual complete basketball team.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
That was bad. Syracuse falls to Miami 91-84. Me and Max, we're going to talk all about it, but we want to hear from you. 315-443-2011. What sticks out to you the most? And you said at the top, Max, worst loss of the season. No doubt about it. And what stands out to me is that it's not like Syracuse was ever you ever thought they were going to win this game, because Miami led for over 34 minutes. It was never like, all right, Syracuse has a lead, they're going to take over now. Miami is really bad, they only have one conference win. Here we go, sunset in Miami, Syracuse wins, they go back home. That just never happened tonight.
I'm not sure where to start with this game. Yeah. Where I want to start is going back to the beginning of this game. I was looking at the lines early, kind of previewing this contest.
Lines were weird.
The lines for this contest, the betting lines on ESPN, had Miami as a 2.5-point favorite. Remember, Miami has only won 5 games this year, and they had only one win in conference play. So naturally, my first thought is, what the heck? Syracuse, a two-point dogs on the road? Hammer that! But I think Vegas knew something we didn't know, and it's that Syracuse is not a good basketball team.
Yeah, it is. And we got our first caller of the night, Colin from Dallas. Colin, you want to talk about the shooting percentages? That is definitely something that was not pretty at all tonight for Syracuse.
Yeah, I was looking at the stats, and Starling just rough. 8 for 21 from the field, and 1 for 6 for the 3-point line. It's just not the numbers that we want.
So you think Starling is the problem for this team? Starling had 25 points on the night.
Colin, you got us?
Colin, you still got us here?
Yeah, I'm there.
You think Starling's the problem? He's the reason Syracuse loses?
Team high 25 points for the Orange.
We got you speechless, Colin?
He's frozen.
Wow.
He's frozen.
All right, can you hear us? Was J.J. Starling the reason this team lost tonight?
There were 3 players in double figures, 2 players with 20 points, including Starling and Eddie Lampkin. And you're telling me that J.J. Starling is the reason that Syracuse lost to the worst team in the ACC. We've got him shell-shocked. He doesn't know what to say.
If you're going to call in tonight, fight back with us here, because we're just as animated. I know someone else is going to be just as animated. Keith from Casanova. Keith, you want to talk about how far this program has fallen? Keith, I think I'm on board with you tonight.
Before I even start talking about the basketball team, I just want to say hats off to everybody at WAER, whether you're courtside or in the studio. You guys have had to cover a flaming car crash of a season.
Yes. Hey, we had a good football season.
Yeah, that's true. But I tip my hat to you about basketball. Listen, with this team, last game we took 3 overtimes to beat a really bad BC team.
Yep.
We lose to the worst team in the ACC tonight. And I'm old enough to remember when we had 20-win seasons, they used to be a given. And the only drama during tournament time for the NCAAs is whether we would get a 1 to 4 seed. And right now we are on the razor's edge for making the ACC tournament. But what does it matter? We're going to lose out early anyway. What do we think is going to happen in the ACC tournament? We're not going to be Wake Forest 2.0. So, do we actually consider that we may lose out the rest of the way with the remaining games that we have? And then what is the path forward? Because this program has fallen so far, I can't even believe where we are right now.
Well, the path is not smooth. Thank you so much for the call, Keith. And you're right. Going back to those last 3 games, a 30-point loss to Duke, then a 3 overtime win against Boston College that, you honestly should have won earlier, and you honestly could have even lost because of some late game scenarios. And then a loss to the worst team in the ACC, that's inexcusable. And it's inexcusable for Syracuse, inexcusable for Syracuse fans to accept, because you've almost become content that that's the standard at this point.
Yeah, it just shows how far this program has fallen. They just can't stay in games. And, we'll talk about this later and why every game's close, but when they lost to Clemson a little while back, I was like, this isn't Adrian Autry's fault. There are bright spots still to go. Maybe now it is Adrian Autry's fault. I don't know. For me, it was a clear and obvious thing to start Chris Bell in the second half. The guy was having the best game of his season, I thought, in the first half. I thought he was playing really, really well.
He was the only one that was actually getting quality shots off from beyond the arc, especially.
Catch and shoot. He was knocking him down.
Lucas Taylor and Elijah Moore had some of the worst three-point attempts I'd ever seen in my entire. It looked like me playing rec basketball, and I'm a tall guy. I don't shoot threes. That's honestly what it looked like. He was, you mentioned it, fading away, stepping back. They just aren't good. They just weren't good shots. No. Syracuse's good shots tonight came when they had quicker ball movement, and when they were quick to that catch and shoot, that catch and shoot mentality.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the problem, is that there just wasn't enough guys that could knock down shots. And Keith, before we let you go, sorry about that, Keith. What do you have as a solution? Is there a solution going forward or no?
Well, the question I have about all of this, and I guess this comes down to coaching, frankly, is when are we going to play to our strengths? As you mentioned, we're more successful when we go down the hole, down the lane to the hoop. Trying to shoot outside shots when we're not an outside shooting team. Pulling players off the floor who kind of had a little bit of a spark, and then all of a sudden they're sitting on the bench. You can kind of just question some of these decisions, and this season is lost. Ultimately, let's be realistic. This season has probably been lost for quite a long time, actually.
Yeah, you're just playing for pride now, I think.
Yeah, and this has been lost for a while. We're not going anywhere in the ACC tournament, even if we make it. We have supposedly a top 10 recruiting class coming in next year.
And Anthony,
what exactly is going to happen with that class? With the same leadership going on right now?
Yeah, there's so many hypotheticals going into next season on if Sadiq and Cayenne are still committed to Adrian Autry and his system. Does Donnie Freeman stay? Does J.J. Starling stay? Because people do think that Syracuse could be a legitimate contender next year if they do retain some of these players. But I feel like it's almost deja vu of last year. I feel like that was the conversation a year ago.
Yeah, and I think if you could reassess this season, you can do this more at the end of the year. I think the transfer portal, they have to take a better approach in, because I just don't think it was the right approach that they took. And that's the reason why there's so many problems, because I think there's so many new faces that just haven't panned out correctly. And, staying on to this game, I think another thing that just hasn't panned out correctly is the lack of a floor general. Jaquan Carlos was having a miserable first half. He had 2 turnovers, was really hurting the team on defense.
He's had a bad last couple of games.
Yes, he has. I thought, now to be fair to him, he did kind of have a spark there towards the end of the second half. He knocked down a big 3 that I think cut it to a 3-point game with 6 minutes left. But then there was no one else that could take over. And if J.J. Starling can't take over, there's no one else on this team that can, because Eddie Lampkin, I thought, had a good game. He's another one where I can't say you can point the blame to Lampkin and why they struggled. It was more so no one could just take over towards the end of the game.
Yeah, Jaquan Carlos, 3 assists. He wasn't even the lead. He wasn't even the lead assister on the squad.
That's what he's supposed to be, right?
That's what he's supposed to be as a floor general, as a true point guard, as we dubbed him to begin this season. Lampkin had 6. He had twice as many as Jaquan Carlos. He's your big man. He's the guy that's supposed to get down and dirty in the paint.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Eddie Lampkin, we mentioned it with Colin from Dallas. 22 points for Lampkin and another double-double, 13 rebounds. He's been playing very, very good basketball. I'd argue some of the best basketball he's played sort of in this stretch that Syracuse has really struggled.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he has. And that's the problem is, you have a few guys that are going to play well, but you just cannot get a team performance. I kind of want to switch gears now to the defense, though, because there was this guy, Matthew Cleveland, 32 points. Anytime this guy plays against Syracuse, he goes off.
I was going to say not just a guy. That is the Hughes killer.
Yeah,
Matthew
literally.
Cleveland.
He is becoming that.
Last year, when Syracuse played Miami, one of the greatest finishes you'll see with that
Claudia
Copeland buzzer beater. Definitely no buzzer beater this year. But Matthew Cleveland went off in that game. Then you go back a year ago to that Florida State game. He also dropped nearly 20 points when he played for the Seminoles. A year back from that, Syracuse played Florida State in the ACC tournament and in the regular season. He's put up double digits in nearly every single game he's played against Syracuse in his college career. It's impressive, and Matthew Cleveland's a guy, like I mentioned, you talk about the defensive side, they let so many of these Hurricane players just really get easy buckets all night and just get down to the paint. Miami, as much as they are a very, very bad defensive team this year, actually are pretty good from two, and they're good from the free throw line, but Syracuse really didn't make Miami earn any of their baskets tonight.
No, not at all. Caroline, you want to talk about Donnie Freeman, the freshman
I do.
who came on the floor tonight. What do you got to say about Donnie Freeman?
If Donnie Freeman was on the floor tonight, they would have won by 10.
Really? Why do you say that?
By 10?
What would have Donnie Freeman have done tonight differently? He hasn't played in over 2 months.
Doesn't matter. Donnie Freeman would have collected boards. He would have put up shots. He would have facilitated plays. It would have been a much different game. I swear, Miami is not better than us, and especially if Donnie Freeman was there, it would be different.
I think you're shooting a long shot here. I don't see how Donnie Freeman would have changed anything.
You think Donnie can single-handedly propel this team to not losing and giving up 91 points to Miami?
I don't see how that could happen.
Well, Donnie Freeman and Naheem McLeod, they carry.
Do they, though?
Do they?
I always believe in the underdog. And, I get that they're not the best. And,
Wait. Let's back up for a second. Did you just say Naheem McLeod carries this team?
Yeah, he's so tall.
Naheem McLeod played 5 minutes tonight.
He has that fresh haircut. He's carrying.
Sure. You know what?
4 rebounds. Why not?
I appreciate the call, Caroline. Looking at the optimistic side with Naheem McLeod. To be fair, Naheem McLeod, I think, has looked okay in recent games, Max.
The haircut or the play?
The haircut of the play?
Maybe
more of the haircut than the play. Caroline, I'm wondering, did you get a chance to watch the game tonight? Did you see Naheem McLeod when he went up for a rebound? And being 7'4", you'd naturally just put it right in the basket because it's 10 feet up. He brought it all the way down to his feet to try to bring it down.
He's been working on that in the gym. I swear, I'm just joking, but, he's definitely, such a great player and, such a good asset to the team. Adrian Autry is so lucky to have him.
Well, if you stay tuned on this show later in the double overtime, AJ and I are going to talk about some of these Syracuse players more in depth, and I've got some interesting thoughts on Naheem McLeod, so maybe you can stay tuned. Caroline, thank you so much for the call.
My pleasure.
Bringing a little bit more of a different perspective.
Yeah.
We've gotten some interesting perspectives tonight so far in the double overtime.
By far the most bewildering to me. I mean, I don't see how you can make any argument for Naheem McLeod.
But Syracuse did just lose to the best team in the anything but the best team in the ACC. This was by far statistically the worst team in the ACC. And so far, some of the perspectives we got are, JJ. JJ not playing well.
Yeah.
Maybe Naheem McLeod needs to get more involved. Again, these are Caroline's thoughts. These are not mine. I just want to make that clear.
Not mine either. I mean, to be fair, I don't think we were talking about this during the game. I don't think Naheem McLeod's missed a shot all season.
He has not missed a shot all season. He's missed a free throw.
Yeah.
But has not missed a shot all season.
So, he is a good paint presence, but there's still a glaring flaw with athleticism.
I go back a couple games when Syracuse was playing Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those Blue Devils players were afraid to go into the paint with Naheem McLeod.
He does kind of have that fear factor when, it's like, oh, man, this guy's big. He could maybe block my shot. I don't want to go up against him.
The only issue is that Naheem McLeod isn't particularly the fastest on the court.
And athleticism,
and there were so many times tonight where Miami got the ball in transition
and zipped down the floor.
I mean, they couldn't even. Naheem was probably still on the right block on the other end by the time they got to the basket.
Just doesn't have it. I want to circle back to this defensive point because I'm still bewildered that Matthew Cleveland had 32 points. Syracuse could handle Cooper Flagg no problem, but they couldn't handle Cleveland. This guy was just going off. I understand that he's a talented guy, but I don't understand how he got that many points tonight. And I think it's partly on Lucas Taylor. If you have similar thoughts to that, 315-443-2011, or if there's something else in this game that you really want to vent out, or if it's a solution. Heck, if it's Naheem McLeod, we'll take your call, or we'll take your text.
We've had some good venters tonight so far.
We'll take your text as well, 315-556-3-2. YouTube, WAR Sports Talk, and Twitter. You can watch us there, interact with us on there as well. We'd love to get your thoughts after a horrendous Syracuse loss. 91-84 they lose to Miami. But, Max, do you have any thoughts on Cleveland and how he got 32 points tonight, and Cooper Flagg, when they played Duke, only had, 12 points or something like that?
It wasn't even particularly Cleveland that was, obviously Cleveland dominated with 32 points, but even guys like Bethea, guys like Paul Jobay, these guys dominated the paint all night long. And I go back to Miami was one of the worst three-point shooting teams coming into this game, second worst in the ACC. So many open looks from three. And then on top of that, you also bring the fact that the defense in the paint wasn't particularly good either because Syracuse wasn't being physical at all. I mean, how many times did we see Syracuse maybe score a bucket? Miami would come right back and score.
I know. It's just bizarre.
It was a quick counter punch, but Miami always seemed to have the upper hand.
It did.
Like.
And it's almost like Syracuse.
It was like Rocky and Ivan Drago. Like, no matter how hard you hit him, like Ivan Drago still is coming over with that long right.
It's almost like Syracuse looked at Miami and was like, all right, team struggles with shooting the three. They struggle to get other guys involved scoring other than Cleveland. Maybe we'll let them shoot some. It's like they looked at him like, all right, let's let them do these things that they've been awful at all season long, and that's what happened. I mean, you did not expect Miami to hit 10 threes tonight, but Syracuse defensively was just atrocious. And I do want to highlight Lucas Taylor a little more because I just think, I think he's had good games defensively.
This was a bad game.
Tonight he was awful. I mean, he just could not handle Cleveland at all. And then offensively, he never really provides anything. And
it didn't help that he had 4 fouls either.
Yeah, he only provided 3 points as well. So he was a problem on the defensive end. And I think, again, it was more of a team defensive failure tonight as well. I mean, has Miami scored 91 points all season? This may be the most points they've put up all year.
Yes, they have. I went back and checked. There have been 2 teams that Miami has scored over 90 points against. Actually, no, 3. There's 3.
Are either of them ACC teams?
No, not even close.
This is
ACC.
bad look for
You know what? I'm going to see if you can even guess the conference of some of these teams.
Okay.
Fairleigh Dickinson.
I heard of the team. No idea what the conference is.
I don't know what the conference is either. I'm not even going to lie. Coppin State.
No, again, teams I've heard of, but I have no idea what the conference is.
Okay, this next one's fun. I'm going to say the team name. I don't want a conference. I want you to give me the mascot. I do know the mascot of this team. Presbyterian. Which, by the way,
is it a night?
Before that Notre Dame game,
was
their most recent win in the middle of December.
That's awful.
The Blue Hose is their is their mascot, by the way.
What is that?
It's a blue hose.
Okay. That's just even worse. I mean, that's the things Adrian Autry is not going to want to hear at all tonight. That, Presbyterian was Miami's most recent win of the season. It just shows how awful this game was for the Orange.
I've said it a couple times, and I'll say it again.
Yeah.
Inexcusable.
Absolutely.
Inexcusable. Because right now, you're sitting, and we got a call earlier that talked about, I wouldn't be shocked if Syracuse loses out the rest of the way. I really wouldn't.
It could be. I mean, this team is so
every single game is up for grabs.
You have no idea what to expect. I expected it. That second half against BC, things were going Syracuse's way. I'm like, all right, they're going to close this one out and be kind of a narrowish win. And then, BC knocks down a 3 and we're in overtime. And tonight, it was towards the middle part of the second half. I'm like, all right, here we go. Starling's getting more involved. Jaquan Carlos just hit a 3. Syracuse is going to work their way out of this one. That did not happen at all.
This may be an interesting question, but I'm interested to get your perspective on this. Would you rather just have Syracuse just have been this bad all year, or do you think having these, this continually drawn out longer version of Syracuse, they're just not they're obviously not as good as we expected them to be this entire season.
I mean, I honestly, for the last month, I've known this team's not good. I mean, with saying that though, I thought they would win tonight. So that's the thing. I thought they were going to win tonight, and they just didn't.
See, I talked before this game about how it was another basement dweller Syracuse was going against. Should have just said it was basement dweller against basement dweller. Because that's what Syracuse is
in the basement.
Syracuse is the basement right now.
Yeah.
Because the only other team that lost to Miami was Notre Dame, who also Syracuse has lost to. No, they did win at home, but they lost on the road to Notre Dame. So lost both on the road to Notre Dame and Miami. 2 terrible losses, and arguably two of the worst losses this season, which is why it's been said a couple times. I mean, Syracuse is like just holding on for dear life to make the ACC tournament.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it is solidified legit question they make it. And that's saying a lot because the ACC is atrocious. It's a terrible conference. It's not good at all. And there was just so many flaws tonight. And really, I mean, this game was kind of a good summary of the season. You thought, J.J. Starling's heating up. He's going to get into 20 points. Lampkin's having a good game. This is a good Syracuse
what makes this
team.
game even more like
and they fall flat on their face.
It's what makes it more unsettling and what puts even more of a bad taste in your mouth because guys like Starling and Lampkin put up good performances. But other than that, and even Chris Bell, one of his best games of the season, I'd argue, especially in that first half. He was lights out. But no one else stepped up to the plate.
No.
Defense didn't step up to the plate at all.
Nope, not one bit. And I think the fact that I think Chris Bell should have started in the second half. I thought that was a no-brainer. But maybe that's just me not knowing basketball well enough. Maybe making starting lineup adjustments in the second half.
Again, I talked to Adrian Autry last week when he didn't play Elijah Moore for any of the end of the first, second half against Boston College and overtime. Now, Elijah Moore did not play good at all today.
No,
he had no points, put up an absolute stinker.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at here is that I'm really starting to question some of the decisions that Adrian Autry is making in terms of the lineup rotations, especially when these guys are really getting going. Because you see, Elijah Moore was starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm, sits out for most of that Boston College game, and now he's kind of reverted.
Yep, and these are all questions that we cannot wait to hear from someone that was in Miami. Ian Nicholas was on the call in that second half. He painted a picture on how this collapse from Syracuse happened. On the other side, we are going to talk to Ian and dive more into what was an awful defeat for Syracuse tonight.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
Listening to the wings of a monarch butterfly. What a magical thought.
They arrive here on the Day of the Dead, which we celebrate here in Mexico, and a lot of the indigenous people believe that it's the souls of their ancestors that are returning, and it's very spiritual.
That's On Point with me, Meghna Chakrabarty.
From 7 to 8 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
If the government was not going to look at these numbers, we were going to answer the question, how many people died in Puerto Rico?
This is how the news should sound. The biggest stories of our time, powered by the journalists of the New York Times. I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily.
Weeknights at 6:30 on 88.3 WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Now right wing three, it's good. Paul Jobay from downtown.
That was Paul Jobay under the Cleveland Show music, because it was the Matthew Cleveland Show today in Miami after the Hurricanes boat race Syracuse 91-84 down in Coral Gables. Max Gifford alongside you with AJ Myers. We're on the air with you until 11 o'clock tonight here on WAER. in one of Syracuse's arguably most embarrassing losses of the year. We've already said it a couple times. It is the most embarrassing loss of this season. And if you want to get your voice heard, you want to vent to AJ and I, you can call into the show at 315-443-2011. You can also get involved on our Twitter and YouTube. WAER Sports Talk is the username to follow along with our coverage on both of those outlets. But we've got a special guest coming on now from down in the 305. From the 315 to the 305, we got Mr. Ian Nicholas, and only funny that we led this off with a Paul Joe Bay introduction, because I'm going to introduce Mr. Ian Nicholas by giving him a nice bonjour.
Bonjour, Max. Yeah, they do it different in France. Good food and good shooters, good three-point shooters.
Yeah,
that guy was lighting it up late.
Definitely.
Oui.
And, you're in Miami, but you sound kind of down. And this is the first, right when we put you on, I was like, I'm going to ask Ian this. You've covered Syracuse for 4 years now. Is this the worst loss in your tenure of covering Syracuse?
Yeah, it's no doubt,
yeah.
AJ. Thanks for dating me.
Sorry.
I've been here for only bad basketball, it would seem. Competitively bad at points, and tonight it was definitely rock bottom. And, you can say all you want about how Miami's played a little bit better recently than they had at the start of the year when they were losing to nobody mid-majors. But this was a battle of the two worst defenses in the conference, and it looked like it. And Syracuse, whose defense has been horrendous this season, found a new low tonight. So, no doubt. I said it on the air, and I had a couple people confirm it just because I wanted to make sure it was true, and I'm pretty sure that it is. This is the first loss for Syracuse against the worst team in the ACC since 2018. So, mathematically, AJ, yeah. Does it feel like it? At this point, I'm just, like you said, I feel a little bit down right now. I'm just numb to it all at this point. So, the body blows, if this is the final one, it doesn't even feel like the death punch, the death blow. But, yeah, sure. I guess it is. This team still might slink into the ACC tournament. But after this game, I say, does it even matter?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really feel like it.
I mentioned the comparison to Ivan Drago and Rocky Balboa. Ian might just be Rocky at this point, just taking all the punches, and I can't even imagine how Adrian Autry feels at this point. Ian, what did Adrian Autry say after a loss like this? Because I think he's the perspective everyone wants to hear from at this point.
Yeah, he's got no answers. He really does not have any answers. And it's frustrating to see, because I personally, I don't have this tight relationship with Red or anything. But
no.
He seems like an easy guy to root for, but
Agreed.
Man, does the guy have an awful poker face. He just comes up to the podium. He's already fuming. You can see red in his eyes.
Was there an apology this go around?
Yeah, like he's
there
done
was
before.
No apology. No Red Autry after, I don't even remember. He's probably apologized a couple times after bad loss.
Yeah, well, there was one I remember.
Wake Forest was
Wake
the worst.
Forest,
That was
yeah.
when that was the Benny Williams' last game.
Yeah, this time a year ago, pretty much. Was the
Pretty
last
much.
time he had to issue public apology. None of that this time around. He was extremely disappointed, and the thing that he continued to go back on, and most of the questions were circled around, obviously, the defense.
Yeah.
He said, we played on one side of the ball today. You got to play defense in this game. You have to be tough. You have to have the will and determination to stop people, and we didn't do it at all. The coach can't go out there and play defense. And tonight, you started to kind of hear it after the Stanford postgame.
Mm-hmm.
You never want to hear the coach put the blame on the players, but the tone of tonight's press conference, and it started in the Stanford postgame, at some points he was kind of saying, yeah, we weren't doing what we planned on doing. And tonight it was the same thing. We had a couple good days of practice, but then tonight, at no point in the game did they play any semblance of good defense. Especially, I know you guys are probably going to ask about Matthew Cleveland too. Somebody asked, oh, well, can you touch on Matthew Cleveland tonight? Why was he so good? And to him, he didn't even give him any flowers. He just said, no, it was too easy for him. He got anything he wanted. So just a total lack of effort from his team. a total lack of answers for why his team is failing to perform outside of the fact that they just don't want to perform on the defensive end.
Syracuse with no answers for Miami, giving up 91 points to the worst team in the ACC. While Syracuse might not have any answers, Ian Nicholas does have some answers down in Coral Gables. You can call into us here on the Double Overtime. 315-443-2011 is the number to get your voice heard. Please call in. Talk to us. Talk to Ian. We want to hear what you have to say. AJ, I know you've harped on this defense a lot tonight.
I have, and this is I'll get to the defense, but Ian, this is a road I've gone down with callers a few times in saying, is it Adrian Autry's fault or is it the players' fault? I've always leaned it's the players' fault. Do you think it's the players' fault is why these have such miserable performances this year, or is it on Autry and why this team's been so bad?
I think at this point it's got to be more of the players.
Okay.
I mean, you can blame Autry for this season being a total bust in terms of the roster construction and maybe not fielding a team that was built to play well on the defensive end. But at this point, I don't think you can blame the coaching staff for just how poor they're playing on that end of the floor. And I think Adrian Autry is a guy who is a straight shooter and is going to tell you when it falls on him. And I think he's fallen on the sword plenty, especially this year. But tonight, another quote from him, you need 5 guys to play defense. If one guy doesn't do his job, all breaks down. It just felt like on every other possession, there was one guy out of place, 2 guys out of place, and no matter of coaching or repetitions this season has fixed the same problem over and over again. So I know repeating the same mistake over and over again is the definition of insanity, and I don't even think it's insane, to be honest. I just think it's just the facts. The players don't care. And it is painfully obvious from the tone that Adrian Autry walked into the press conference with tonight that he is coaching a team that does not want to play out the string right now. Offensively, they want to play out the string. Because that looks like nice on the box score, right? JJ with 20-something, Eddie with 20-something. He did say Eddie Lampkin play with fire as he has throughout.
Which I thought he did. I thought he had a really nice game.
He's been good over this.
I thought he had a little big bounce to him too. He had a few nice dunks. But here's the thing with Eddie Lampkin, I think, is he can't single-handedly win you games. He's just not the style of player. J.J. Starling, sure, that he's that kind of player. But Eddie Lampkin isn't that kind of player.
Chris Bell, a guy not necessarily the best on the defensive end, and
no, not at
Ian,
all.
we know we hail you as the one true ball knower because AJ and I are going back and forth. We're wondering if we just don't know ball. How do you sit a guy like Chris Bell to begin the second half when he was cooking in the first?
Yeah, ball knower, I wouldn't. First of all, I'll rescind my ball knowledge slightly.
Is it because of the wedgie thing?
Because of the wedgie?
Why? Because I called that a wedgie?
It was not a wedgie. Come on.
I wanted it to be a wedgie.
Yeah, we could tell. We could hear it.
I was channeling my inner Ian Eagle. WAER Hall of Famer, calling March Madness this year for CBS. To get back to your question, yeah, that's the one thing. If you want to take it back to coaching, right? Because I know I've been tough on the players so far.
Which I think is fair. I think people need to understand that it's not all Autry's fault. There needs to be blame on the players. But go ahead, Ian.
Coach Autry has been very strict with his rotations over the years. I mean, I like to go back to the fact that he kept starting Justin Taylor and playing Justin Taylor down the stretch last year. And now you got another, even when he was, you couldn't hit the ball in the basket to save his life. And the same thing kind of with Lucas Taylor this year. He has always been a pro-Lucas guy. He played Lucas through some unbelievably brutal stretches for him offensively early in the year. And now that he's kind of caught fire from time to time, he did at Boston College a couple weeks ago. He did at Cal a couple weeks ago too. When he does play well, I think he's the more consistent defender, and Autry's more willing to play him. So even if Chris kind of goes out there and hits a couple in succession like he did in the end of the first half, and while you guys are asking me the question, Autry doesn't know what he's ever going to get from Chris Bell out on the floor.
No.
He didn't say that in the post-game press conference, but just from the even Jim Boeheim was never one to praise Chris Bell quickly for a big night. It's almost like we expect him to do that, and if he doesn't do that, he's a 0 for me, and I don't want to take the risk of playing him. So that's kind of what I've seen.
And here's the thing, at halftime, Ian, I'm thinking, all right, here we go. This is a Chris Bell, NC State kind of game. He's got 12 points in the first half. Second half, what did he end with? He didn't end with anything spectacular. I don't really remember him doing much. He
ended with 14.
He ended with 14 points. This is my point. There's no consistency from this team. If you have Chris Bell getting 12 points in the first half but then 2 in the second, there's just no one on this team you can rely on to get a full game performance, even from J.J. Starling. But he was quiet in the first half.
But it doesn't even matter if you have these full game performances when the defense is playing so horrible?
Yeah, no, you're right.
It was a wash from the start tonight because Syracuse was just playing catch-up.
Exactly.
Didn't have the lead until early in the second half, and then only had it, for moments at a time, right? And it's not like the offense needed to get you one more bucket. They were getting everything,
yeah.
Right? 45% from the floor.
8 threes isn't bad.
From 3. Yeah, for a team that was another thing that was super alarming.
Yes.
Was, Miami ends up making 10 threes. Like, come on. They were the second worst three-point shooting team in the conference headed in. So I guess you could call that an anomaly, but it was really weird. Syracuse opened up in the zone tonight.
That was interesting, yeah.
They opened up in the zone. They have no idea what they want to do defensively.
Took a page out of Syracuse women's basketball's book from Sunday.
Sure. I mean, at least they're winning in the midst of a crappy year.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
They weren't winning for a lot that game until they moved to man.
Yeah.
But yes,
and the zone didn't last long at all.
No, not at all.
I think the first media timeout he changed it.
Yeah, no, but the point still stands with starting with that zone and just really having no sense of direction for the game. Maybe it was because Miami came in as such this
awful
three-point shooting team.
Maybe. But that changed quickly.
Yeah, multiple threes for Cleveland, 3 threes for Bethea, who was almost a Syracuse player, but decided to go to Miami. Hasn't really worked out for him, but
worked out tonight.
Worked out tonight. Multiple threes from Joe Bay, like we talked about earlier on in a segment. It was, and you know what was the sad part is, regardless of a defense that Syracuse was in, none of those threes felt difficult.
No, they all seemed wide open. Yeah.
Yeah, to keep talking about France, we didn't have any Steph Curry Olympic dribble all around the night.
You dropped a night and a wee, but there was no French Steph Curry tonight.
No, it was just catch and shoot, catch and shoot, catch and shoot, driving kick.
And how do you let up consistently those rhythm catch and shoot threes at the Division I level?
That's where I think it's the players' fault. That's not Autry's fault, because I'm sure Autry's saying that in the halftime, the timeout huddles, like, let's defend the three. I think that's the players' fault and just not caring on the
Sometimes
defensive end.
when teams are hot, they're hot. But allowing them to get those easy catch and shoot threes over and over.
Miami hasn't been hot all season. Like, it's not like they were like, oh, this team's really hitting threes as of late. No, Syracuse gave them confidence to hit threes.
Ian Nicholas, our play-by-play broadcaster, you could hear the shock in his voice every single time Miami hit one of their threes tonight that propelled them to a 91-84 win over Syracuse. If you have any final questions for Ian, AJ and I are on the air until 11. We've only got Ian for just a little bit more time here. You can call into the show at 315-443-2011. Also get involved on our text line, 315-556-3929. Ian, there's so much to digest, whether it's the defense, whether it's maybe some players on Syracuse not stepping up offensively. What do you think happened in that second half? That really, because Syracuse actually had a little bit of a spurt where they took the lead, and then they just kind of, reverted back to how they had been playing.
Yeah, I would say a lack of focus, right? Like a lack of focus on the mission, right? Basketball is a game of runs, and Syracuse never went on a commanding run tonight. And you can't go on a run. What's a run? A run is uninterrupted scoring. Right? And you can't go on a run without playing on the defensive side of a ball. So, Autry had mentioned, he had alluded to the fact that at points this year, his team has not played defense. At points. But he had said this was the first performance where his team did not show up on that end of the floor for the entire game. So then I followed up with, Coach, when was the moment where you felt like they weren't going to show up for the entire game. Was there an actual point in the game? And it was kind of in that stretch because Syracuse was getting back in it. But then he answered saying, I thought we would be able to lock in with 8 minutes to go, and we didn't.
Wow.
Right?
I think that's shocking.
And it's February.
Yes.
And there's no focus on the mission. That's insane.
So it's just they could luck into a stop or two, but they're just not. They're already playing behind the 8 ball with the personnel, right?
Mhm.
But they are just not even pushing the ball forward on the defensive end.
No.
It's
Yeah.
uninspiring, and if you listen to the post-game press conference tonight, you'll probably hear a synonym of that word like 20 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's shocking. I think that's a good word too, and focus is a good word, and it's shocking that this team cannot, lock in against an awful Miami team. And it's a close game towards the end of the second half. They had a chance, but unfortunately they just could not get it done.
Yeah, you would just think, I understand that Syracuse might not be the bluest of blue bloods, but you would think putting on the jersey, coming to this kind of team, the players on the team would have a sense of pride, right?
Mhm.
Like, regardless of who you play for, if you're not the worst team in the conference and you're playing the worst team in the conference, you would think you would take some pride in that.
Yeah.
But there's been so many points this year, whether it was Lemoyne or whether it was Youngstown
Exactly.
State.
It's almost like we've seen this coming.
There's been so many.
You've seen this lack of focus all season long, and it did cost them because those teams were bad teams as well. But tonight against a bad Miami team, it clearly cost them.
Anybody can beat anybody in
Yep.
conference play, and Miami has proven that a couple of times over the last few weeks. Notre Dame, they beat them too, and you know what? You want a side-by-side comparison? Syracuse and Notre Dame, two teams picked to finish in the middle of the conference, two teams with younger, inspiring-ish head coaches who could take the leap in their second year with their program, and neither has been up to the challenge. So it'll be very interesting to see, because I look at the side-by-side, I see the same gosh dang team.
Yeah.
And it's not fun to watch.
And this might be a bigger conversation, but we've heard a lot about Jim Larinaga tonight and about him stepping down. And I'm not bringing this conversation to Autry at all. I rather want to focus on the players' side of Larinaga's argument. I think there's an argument to be made that some of these players just have their foot out the door. It's already been announced that one of your best players, Donnie Freeman, is out for the entire season. And as a result, you've got a month left to play. You might make the ACC tournament. You might not. But even going back to last year, how many players were just ready to get out of that locker room, step into the transfer portal, or go to the draft?
I think that's ridiculous, too, because in college basketball, I've harped on this before, there's no such thing as a rebuild year, because you don't get it. If you finish the worst record in the conference, you don't get anything for that. You don't get a few extra guys from the portal. It's not like, oh, you could pick the best guy in the transfer portal. No, that's not a thing.
No Philadelphia Sixers trust the process.
Thank God, there is no trust the process in college athletics, period. And, you should still play for something because something could still happen in the ACC tournament. But right now, and I think, Ian, you've really harped on it tonight, it just doesn't look like this team really is that interested in maybe playing for Autry or just playing in general because tonight was such a lackluster performance.
Guys, I got proof for you. Social media does not lie.
No?
Nope.
I'm just going to tell you some cold, hard facts. Donnie Freeman's Twitter account liked a tweet saying that his injury situation was mismanaged and that Coach Autry was not given the truth. That's the fact. There are screenshots out there.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
There's the truth that somebody with the last name of Mintz wrote a soliloquy in the comment section of the YouTube video of Red Autry's post-game press conference after the Duke game talking about how the Malik Brown situation broke down last year and about the whole organization, that is the basketball team. Look at Chris Bell's comment section on Instagram. Chris Bell's liked the comment saying he's going to pop off after he hits the portal.
Yeah.
Look, you can believe the social media all you want. Those are the facts. The players might not tell you media, but the players are telling the media through back channels what's going on here and what they think. So, unfortunately, in this format, I can't give you those answers, But as you both know, I am chronologically online. The facts are the facts. So it is a beautiful world that we live in. Social media is a dangerous thing.
Nobody does better Instagram preparation than Ian Nicholas, and he had a fantastic call tonight in Coral Gables. Ian, enjoy the rest of your time in Florida, and make sure you tell your partner, Jordan Leonard, to get to California safe tomorrow as well.
I'm sure he's meeting a very lanky fellow out there.
Yeah, unfortunately. Ian, thanks so much for joining us. AJ and I are going to roll along after a quick break here on the Double Overtime, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how pretty much every game from here on out is up for grabs and how maybe every game that Syracuse has played has been up for grabs. That's up next here on the Double Overtime here on WAER.
Start your Sunday mornings off right with Sunday Morning Gospel from 6 to 8 a.m. right here on WAER. Hosted by Cora Thomas, the program features some of the best local and national gospel artists. You'll hear everyone from Daryl Coley to the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir to the Winans family. More information is available online at waer.org. Join us Sunday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. for Sunday Morning Gospel on 88.3 FM WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream, or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts, on our website at waer.org.
Listening to the wings of a monarch butterfly. What a magical thought.
They arrive here on the Day of the Dead, which we celebrate here in Mexico, and a lot of the indigenous people believe that it's the souls of their ancestors that are returning, and it's very spiritual.
That's On Point with me, Meghna Chakrabarti.
From 7 to 8 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Who takes it fast from right to left, working on the near side baseline, goes around it, tosses over to Cuff in the left wing. Back up top, Chris Bell pops from downtown. It's good. Chris Bell with 5 points on the night.
Double overtime, continuing to roll on here tonight after Syracuse falls a bad defeat, as we've harped on all night, 91-84. AJ Myers joined alongside Max Gifford. Max, we've uncovered this game, I think, pretty well, and the defensive issues, lack of other scoring options as well. But really, even as this game was going on, me and you were talking about it, and we're like, when was the last time this team had a comfortable victory? And it kind of, made me bring up the question, like, this team really cannot win comfortably, period. And tonight they couldn't even win. I thought it was going to be kind of, we'd be talking like, how could they barely beat Miami? Unfortunately, that didn't even happen. If you have a reason for why this team if you want to talk about why they can't win, we'd love to take that call as well. But why they can't just cruise in a game? Why it's got to always be these close, nail-biting finishes that sometimes end poorly, like it did tonight? Call in 315-443-2011, or you could text us 315-556-3929. We're also on X at WAR Sports Talk, and YouTube. You can watch us there, and on Twitter as well, at WAR Sports Talk. Max, do you know why this team can't win comfortably?
They haven't been able to win comfortably all season.
Albany. That was the last game I looked at. That was the one where I was like, all right, that was an easy win. But other than that, it's been either a loss or a narrow win.
Go back to the first game of the season. Lemoyne. That was a 4-point win. Colgate was a 2-point win.
Those weren't comfortable.
Youngstown State was in double overtime.
Yeah, which that should have been the biggest foreshadowing ever. That should have told all of us that this is going to be a bad year.
Every
that showed a lot.
every single game, the Youngstown State, I guess, was the biggest in terms of margin.
Mm-hmm.
A Texas Tech game and Texas loss were within 4 to 5 points. Cornell was probably the first comfortable win of the season. 10 points.
I remember that game.
The beginning was bad.
Yeah,
it was a bad
that was
start
Donnie
for
Freeman's
Syracuse.
highlight of the year.
No, U-Albany was definitely the most comfortable win, and arguably the only comfortable win Syracuse has had this year. Maybe unless you include Bucknell, potentially.
Even that, I remember, was kind of close by at halftime. It was like, oh, well, Bucknell's hanging around. So I don't think other than U-Albany, I really don't think there was a game this year where, especially in ACC play, that's been comfortable. And the biggest reason I'm going to point to, and there's a lot. I mean, you could really point at Autry, but I'm not going to do that because, one, I like Autry and I believe in him, and I don't think all of this is his fault. And I think Ian really harped on that really well. I think it's just they don't have a point guard. Jaquan Carlos can't do it. Kyle Cuff can't do it. They don't have a
What,
floor
Ian
general.
Eagle, when he says a true point guard at the top of our broadcast, he's lying to us?
Unfortunately, this isn't Ian Eagle's fault. He had no idea, but I think he is, yeah.
I mean, this is just... I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah.
I keep just running myself into the same wall. I don't have much good to say about this basketball team.
No.
Because they're not a good basketball team.
No, absolutely
And they've
not.
continued to show that, and I think this game is just a stamp on the whole season. A real stamp to show that, yeah, this season is a dud. It's going to be one of the worst seasons Syracuse has ever had in their entire history.
Mm-hmm.
And the only chance they have to salvage it, potentially, to make it not even respectable,
is a little Cinderella run in the ACC tournament?
Oh, well, I mean, people do forget that if Syracuse wins from here on out, they are the national champions.
True.
I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing that optimism enough. Unfortunately, I don't have that optimism.
I don't think anybody does.
But what I will say is that Syracuse's only chance to make this season, okay, not the worst, is if they win out.
Yeah. Because I think
like if they win out the rest of ACC play.
Because Boeheim's worst season was his last season. He got 16 wins. I think
I've got the numbers for you right here.
All right.
So the Orange are 11-14 now.
Yes.
They now would have to win out. That means 6 games.
I know
a 6-game win streak.
UNC, SMU are on the schedule. Those aren't easy games.
They'd have to win out to avoid topping Jim Boeheim's 16-17 record just a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Which was the first time the Orange had finished under 500 in Boeheim's regime.
Wow. And that says a lot. I mean, that says how I think last season was progress or, kind of a gap year.
They won 20 games last year.
And now
they
this
won
year
20 games.
And they haven't, and I think because it has to do with the way this roster was assembled and the fact that there just isn't a good floor general on this team. Jaquan Carlos isn't that. He's too much of a defensive reliability. You saw that in the first half of tonight's game. And offensively, he doesn't get enough assists. Eddie Lampkin had more assists than he did tonight. He can't find the open shooter. So I think that is one of the biggest reasons and why this team simply cannot win consistently this year.
Yeah, and along with that same line, not having that premier floor general, not having someone who could facilitate the basketball as well, you also just don't have anyone that consistent. Granted, Starling and Lampkin have been pretty good over this last stretch.
Pretty solid, yeah.
But you don't have a Judah Mintz type like you did last year. You don't have a Buddy Boeheim type like you did a couple of years ago. And those guys, snap of the fingers, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, I take them back in a freaking heartbeat.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. And you thought that was J.J. Starling. He had a really what was the game he took over? He's had a few games
Which
this
is
year.
why I'm hesitant when so many Syracuse fans or just anyone around the program brings up, oh, well, next year is the year. If Starling comes back, if Freeman comes back, where's your evidence to back that up? Just purely because of the fact that Starling is going into another year of college, just because he's going to be a senior?
I think maybe you can make the Starling argument because he's had a few games this year where he's taken over. Remember Georgia Tech? He really took over that game late in the second half.
Sure.
Freeman, you didn't see enough from him. You can't make any argument with Donnie Freeman. Because you just simply did not see enough of him on the court this year.
But even getting these recruits from the portal, it's a wild, wild west.
Exactly.
You do not know what you are going to get from either the portal or these recruiting classes. You just simply don't know anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing. If when Autry turns off the lights in his office at the end of the year, no matter what point that is in the season, if there's one thing he's learned. He's got to look at the transfer portal differently because he didn't. That just wasn't. It simply didn't work. Lucas Taylor hasn't worked. Jaquan Carlos hasn't worked. Sure, Eddie Lampkin has, and I think Eddie Lampkin has done all that he could have done. I don't think there's much more you could ask of him, but too many guys in the transfer portal just simply haven't fit.
Roy Williams, Coach K, Jim Boeheim, Leonard Hamilton, Jim Larinaga, and Tony Bennett are all guys who have simply figured out they couldn't figure out the transfer portal. They couldn't figure out a system to stay as consistent as they want to in college basketball every season. And right now, Syracuse is still in the midst of trying to figure out what works for them. Because in year one, it didn't work.
No, it didn't. The transfer portal didn't work. If you guys think there's something else that simply didn't work, if it was not finding that floor general in the point guard position, or if there's something else that we haven't hit on, give us a call, 315-443-2011. We'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you got something else to harp on from this awful 91-84 Miami defeat, give us a call. We want to get your voice on the air. We want to hear your thoughts. Because this is rock bottom. This is the worst loss of the year, the worst loss for Adrian Autry. I know he's had the margin of defeats have been much worse. He's suffered much heftier defeats than this one tonight, but Miami was an awful team. They're not good at all, and Autry's team simply did not look like invested in this game, especially on that defensive end, and that's why it was a close game the entire way, and that's why they couldn't figure it out at the end, is because defensively they couldn't figure things out.
No, and the disappointing thing is there's no one specific thing you can point to and say, oh, this is why this team has been consistently so bad the entire year.
No, there's a lot of things you can point to.
Because in the first couple of games of the year, it was transition defense. It was one of the worst in the entire country. Yes, another problem again tonight. So, it tends to grow and shrink, or it comes in waves, as I'll call it. Right? No, sorry. I was trying to make a hurricane joke. It didn't work. That's all right.
Here's my question to you. Is that an Autry needs to fix thing, or is that a players needs to fix thing? I think that's a player thing. That is just simple hustle. And I don't think Autry can coach that nor teach that. You either have that or you don't.
The coach does not step on the court.
Thank you. Yes.
The coach doesn't take the shots.
I couldn't agree more.
Coach doesn't stop the shots.
No, he doesn't. And that's where, people want to say, Autry's not the guy. It's not all Autry's fault. And I think Ian said in his post-game press conference how just kind of demoralized he sounded tonight because I think he's out of answers. He doesn't know why this team is performing so bad. He doesn't know why they don't have answers late in games to close them out. I don't think he knows. He simply does not know.
And he can't fire all the players.
No. Again, this isn't professional stuff. You can't trade players. You can't cut players. They're here. The roster you assemble.
Not yet. We don't know what college basketball will become in a few years.
The roster you assemble in November or September, that's the roster you're going with. And unfortunately for Autry and Syracuse, this roster just has not rolled the right way at all.
Sorry, this is a quick tangent. Wouldn't it be so cool if there was like some sort of
trade deadline?
Trade deadline. You trade portal picks potentially.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe.
And could you imagine
trade recruits?
Yeah. Could you imagine this trade couldn't go through because these two classes at these two programs don't quite match, so they couldn't get this deal done. Or credit wise,
I'm giving you a 2031 recruiting class pick or a member of our 2031 recruiting class. For Cooper Flag.
Yeah. And his 15 credits to that guy
that would be 15 credits. We're trading credits now at this point.
That's what something Syracuse would need because there were glaring holes back when they played Youngstown State, and those holes have shown all year long.
This team does not deserve credit. Maybe school credits, but not but not much of any credit for a performance like this.
Not at all.
Because you can't win defensively. You can't win in transition. Mm-mm. You can't stop the three against one of the worst teams at shooting the three.
That may be the most glaring thing tonight is the fact that Miami made 10 threes. They made Miami look like the Golden State Warriors.
Miami is not the worst offense, okay? I'm going to go back to that. Terrible defense. The worst.
Yeah. That's why Syracuse put up 84
One of the
points.
worst defensive teams in college basketball.
Yeah.
But offensively, not the worst team in the world.
No.
They're actually quite okay. They're quite okay at getting 2-pointers.
Yeah.
Quite okay. They're also all right from shooting from the charity stripe.
Yeah.
But how do you let these players like Cleveland, like Joe Bay, just keep cutting into the lane and just absolutely bodying you and physically challenging you, and you're not giving them any sort of battle?
No, and that's where
you're not making them earn their shots.
It's effort. I'm going to point on Naheem McLeod here just because I have this play kind of stuck in my head. He could get a defensive rebound, but then he puts his arms down, the ball just falls on the floor, and it's an offensive rebound for Miami. I think that happened a few times in the first half.
I think it's more of a Naheem problem, not necessarily a defensive problem. He also only played 5 minutes, so it's a very
small sample size.
Did grab 3 rebounds
he did.
That span.
But I think that's the kind of effort you're just not seeing on the defensive end.
I think there's so many players you can look to. I mean, a guy that maybe we don't point to a lot, but really does not add a whole lot of flair on the defensive end is Peter Majstorovic.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah. Peter Majstorovic, he's a good player, but that's about it. Like, he doesn't do anything great. He just does everything kind of good, I think.
Again, he flies under the radar because he's not necessarily playing all the time. And we don't have to give him necessarily too much credit or not enough credit because I don't necessarily say that Peter cost Syracuse games.
I mean, he didn't cost them the game tonight. He didn't add anything to the game tonight, though.
No,
That's
but there's
the thing.
not necessarily any one player, I would say, that cost Syracuse the game.
No, I think it was a group thing.
It was a group thing, and Miami also played pretty good offensively
They did.
as well.
I think if the biggest thing you could say to really put a cherry on top was the defense. That's what I mean. The fact that you allowed Miami to get 91 points. No matter how good of an offensive team you think, defensively it was just atrocious tonight.
You're an Eagles fan, right?
Yes.
Defense wins championships. That was the case on Sunday.
It does.
And this was the case for Miami tonight.
Yeah, it won them the game. Sure. Yeah. Syracuse's offense didn't look good. Their defense certainly did not look good in a 91-84 loss to Syracuse. Max, when you think Miami, what's the first thing you think of?
Bad basketball.
Okay. Second thing you think of, I'm talking about the city of Miami in the state of Florida.
Oh, Florida? I think sunny.
Sunny, yes.
It's the Sunshine State.
It is the Sunshine State. We're going to be talking about some weather, but we're going to put a spin on it with some Syracuse players. Stick around for that on the other side.
The beauty of jazz is any time is a great time to experience new aspects of the musical genre and appreciate its rich history. WAER's HD2 channel is a dedicated source for jazz music 24 hours a day. Available to stream at WAER.org or on your HD radio. WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
If the government was not going to look at these numbers, we were going to answer the question, how many people died in Puerto Rico?
This is how the news should sound. The biggest stories of our time, powered by the journalists of the New York Times. I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily.
Weeknights at 6:30 on 88.3 WAER.
Whether you enjoy the funky sounds of James Brown or the pristine vocals of Aretha Franklin, we hope you'll choose WAER for your fix of jazz. Weeknights on WAER feature specialty jazz programs, and throughout the overnight, Pub Jazz curates a playlist of jazz favorites for you to enjoy. Tune in at 88.3 FM and WAER.org.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Weekday mornings are a juggle, sometimes even a struggle. Morning Edition from NPR News eases you into your day and keeps you company through the chaos of a busy morning. Hear interviews that give you context on the day's biggest stories, along with reporting and updates on the latest breaking news. Stay on top of the world with Morning Edition every weekday.
Weekdays from 5 to 9 on 88.3 WAER.
to Cleveland. Now swings it back to Bethea on the right wing. To Cleveland, left wing. Thought about a three. Driving in the left alley. Layup up and in. Matthew Cleveland is unstoppable in the early going.
It's a cool, crisp 24 degrees in Syracuse, New York, but nice and cozy here in our Ostrom Avenue studios. I'm Max Gifford. He's AJ Myers, and we're back on the double overtime here on WAER, recapping Syracuse's brutal 91-84 loss at Miami. Brutal might be even an understatement.
I think so, yeah.
From how bad this team played tonight. We want to hear your thoughts, though. We want to hear your grievances. AJ and I have gone back and forth all night. We want to get some more voices involved. And if you want to get your voice heard on the air right now, call in 315-443-2011. Again, that's 315-443-2011. Also, make sure to interact with us on our Twitter and our YouTube stream at WAER Sports Talk. I started this block off talking about the weather in our neck of the woods because, AJ, while we might not have any of the education to back it up, we're becoming some meteorologists for this next segment here on the double overtime. Everyone talks about the five-man rotation in basketball. Syracuse had a five-man rotation offensively tonight. Maybe not so much defensively, though.
No,
but
not at all.
No, not so much defensively. We're not talking about necessarily one side of the ball, though, because Syracuse did play in Miami. And when you think of Miami, you think of Florida. When you think of Florida, you think of the Sunshine State. We're given our five-player forecast. Now, this isn't necessarily the five players that started for Syracuse, but just five players that AJ and I have our thoughts on. And we're going to give each of those players and I guess identify them with a certain type of forecast. This could be kind of throughout the last couple of games, could have been throughout the season. We've got plenty of thoughts on these on plenty of players for Syracuse. We could probably go on and on talking about each one of these players and their forecast. We just have time for five. AJ, I'll go to you first on this because I'm interested to know kind of what you're feeling weather-wise early on.
Weather, as a team whole, how I'm feeling weather-wise?
Well, I think everyone's pretty gloomy right now. Everyone's in the clouds.
Yes, absolutely. After this game, very, very. There's a hurricane in Syracuse, and not in a good way.
Oh no,
not in a good way. It's not good. I don't think this is.
We're not talking about natural disasters, okay?
No,
we're just talking about the weather.
No, and look, this is not how it's. It was supposed to go. This season was not supposed to be cloudy. It was supposed to be a sunny season. To start.
Okay, so then maybe we should focus on someone who has overall had, a sunnier. Sorry. Not quite the same word. Funny, sunny.
Yes.
But this guy has had some kind of fun in the sun. J.J. Starling. Although I don't necessarily think I want to assign this guy sort of a sunny weather or even like, an overcast. Because with J.J., it's been sort of on and off. Scattered showers.
You're going to get that with a lot of players,
if you will.
Oh, here we go.
JJ's been singing in the rain. Maybe it's because he has to play under this cloud that is Syracuse men's basketball at this point. But I also think to the point of JJ being a scattered storm guy, he's been sometimes consistent, inconsistent, can pour it in when you really need to.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes takes the foot off the gas just a little. Some other guys have to take over. Starling's got to be your guy that really needs to take over. So
you need more heavy downpours.
I would much rather have more heavy downpour from J.J. Starling, especially getting physical down in the paint, which he does so well. That's what makes him so effective.
Towards the end of the game, in this Miami game, he had a great basket where he missed the first attempt, but he was right there to get his own miss and get a putback.
He's aggressive on the glass. Yeah. He's aggressive in the paint. He can take good shots from the outside, can take good mid-range jumpers, but sometimes he just doesn't take them when he needs to. Doesn't necessarily have that ISO energy that he quite needs to take over the contest. So maybe quite isn't belching out in the rain, but, he's singing in the rain.
And I think, I don't think he was singing the right tune in the first half of tonight's game.
He was out of tune.
Yes, he was out of tune. 6 points, 3 of 6. And I think what put him out of tune is he was 0 of 3 from 3. And why are you taking those threes? Just get into the paint. You're not known as a knockdown three-point shooter.
And JJ's even talked about it multiple times. He's a tall guy. He's 6'4" as a guard. You've got some size.
Drive in.
You're a bulky guy. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily as bulky as maybe some of your other teammates.
Yeah.
but you've got some strength to get into the paint, snake in, and score.
Definitely, and I think you just need to see more of that right off the jump. I think, remember back to Stanford, too, it was like he wasn't on the court. He needs to assert his dominance right away for this team to be successful.
Starling needs to rein in some more threes. That's why I give him scattered showers for our first forecast.
All right, second forecast is going to go over to me, and I'm going to talk about a player who, when you looked at the futures forecast of this season, you thought it was going to be a lot of sun. It hasn't been anything like that. I'm talking about Chris Bell, and unfortunately, this year has been partly cloudy with even a little bit more clouds. It just hasn't been Chris Bell's season, and it was supposed to be. He was supposed to be the reliable catch-and-shoot, knock-down three-point shooter for this team. He's been anything but that. He's been so poor this year that he's been rescinded to the bench. That was not the plan for Coach Autry. If you would have sat Coach Autry down at the start of the season and said, hey, in the middle of ACC play, in the middle of February or even January, Chris Bell would be coming off your bench, he would have been like, what? Because Chris Bell was supposed to be a sunny three-point shooter that we saw last year at times. This year is supposed to be that consistency with the three-point shooting. It's been anything but that.
I think if you asked anyone at the beginning of the year that Chris Bell would be, rescinded to the bench and would go back to playing that role, I would go back to even Jim Boeheim's days here at Syracuse, where Chris would miss one shot, he put him on the bench.
Right on the bench.
But I do wonder with Chris Bell, and this is something that even as he struggled towards the beginning of the season, is it because he just is not that coachable still?
Maybe. I don't know. And it's sad because remember against Louisville last year, he had 30 points. He went 11 of 15. He hit 8 3-pointers, and you were like, wow.
The Louisville game, the NC State game.
There were
this guy had the
games.
second best three-point percentage in the ACC last year.
There was a few games last year where it was like, this guy looks like the real deal from beyond the arc. And could you imagine if he consistently made 5 threes a game? They would have won tonight probably.
Even with a performance like he did against Miami tonight, I think that kind of opened up the sun a little.
Yes, that's why it's
because
partly
other
cloudy.
than that, I think it would have been overcast for Chris
Probably.
Bell.
I mean,
There's been barely any light at the end of the tunnel for him right now.
You saw the sun in the first half with 12 points. It really looked like Chris Bell had found his form. In the second half, he has 2 points. And it's just like, oh, there are those clouds again. This guy just can't do it for a full game. And, unfortunately now I think Chris Bell, that was his 12 points for the month maybe. That's just kind of how it's been. He won't have another game like this, all year where he consistently knocks down a few shots. It just hasn't been his season, and it's really unfortunate for Syracuse.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mentioned every player, and honestly, the Syracuse basketball program has a little bit of a cloud over it. I would say mostly cloudy, especially after a loss to Miami. They fell 91-8, or Syracuse fell 91-84 tonight to the Hurricanes. AJ and I are playing a little 5-man forecast, giving some players sort of their forecasts for the season, kind of where they are right now. We are in no way meteorologists, so if you want to also maybe give a specific player a forecast or you disagree with us about our takes, you can call into the show 315-443-2011 to get your voice heard. We want to hear from you. Also, you can text us at 315-556-3929. We've gone pretty gloomy so far, very gloomy. We started out with J.J. Starling. We said been a little bit of scattered showers. We had Chris Bell, and we said it was partly cloudy. We had some even music under it. Chris Bell having a bad day, maybe even a bad season.
Yeah,
had a great first half today against the Hurricanes. Maybe we should move on to maybe
better conditions.
Better conditions. I think that's a good way to say it. We got a great call earlier from Caroline. Well, actually, I'll call it one of the calls of all time.
Yeah.
She was adamant about Naheem McLeod carrying the Syracuse
It was also
team.
very passionate about his haircut.
It was also very passionate
Which
about his
I
haircut.
haven't noticed. Did he recently get a haircut?
I thought Naheem McLeod always kind of had the same haircut.
hairstyle. I don't know. But back to your point.
Naheem, if you're listening, I thought it looked great as well,
Yeah.
and you can hear the music starting to play because for a guy like Naheem, you kind of know what you kind of knew what you were going to get. Going back to last year, before he suffered the injury, really didn't add a whole lot of versatility on the floor. But with that said, in the sparse moments that he has played this season, he has really sort of changed directions. And we've got Caroline currently on the line. Another Caroline is joining us here on the Double Overtime, and she is not fired up about Naheem McLeod, Chris Bell, or J.J. Starling. She's fired up about Adrian Autry. Maybe she wants to show him the sun. Caroline, what you got for us?
Listen, I'm very disappointed in this recent loss, and I think we got to fire Autry and hire McNamara.
Wow.
Jerry McNamara? Bring him back?
Yeah, bring him back. Bring him home.
Bring him home. But see, okay, Caroline, what would Jerry McNamara do differently than what Autry's doing?
He would make them win.
How?
And that's what I need.
How?
Would he start Naheem McLeod at center?
Probably.
All right, well, Caroline, you know what? I'm fully on board with your Naheem McLeod take. Maybe not fully on board, but I agree that he's made good impact.
If you have any choice at a head coach right now, you want Jerry McNamara.
That's who you want?
I mean,
who's currently coaching?
Do I have any choice in the entire world?
Yes, you have any choice in the entire world. I'm putting you on the spot here.
Okay. That's a lot of pressure.
And guess what? They can leave the team they're currently at as well.
Oh wait, okay, I know.
Okay, tell me.
I want Sal Volcano to be the coach.
Sal Volcano, the guy from Impractical Jokers?
Yeah. I think he would be so good.
All right. I'm not sure Sal Volcano is any Mike Krzyzewski. Caroline.
Yeah. We appreciate
you brought some very interesting takes tonight to the Double Overtime. We really appreciate you calling in. I don't think anyone from reality television is Syracuse's best option to be the head coach. Caroline surely has some thoughts about him, Naheem McLeod, but back to my thoughts on Naheem McLeod, because we were talking sort of the weather before we got on, and again shifted very quickly to Adrian Autry, not talking about the Impractical Jokers. Crazy stuff. But Naheem McLeod, most of the time you think a guy like that, would kind of go backwards, but in this case, he's kind of been okay in what you kind of, so I would say it's sort of reverse expectations. Hasn't missed a shot this year. In 5 minutes played tonight, still grabbed 3 boards. So I'm giving Naheem McLeod a retrograde forecast.
Yeah.
He's going in a different direction than I expected him to go in.
No, absolutely. And I think, give him credit. The minutes he's gotten, he's always played, pretty hard. He's always tried to make an impact. And, he had to come in. I don't think he was expected to come in this early because, remember, Eddie Lampkin got that, injury on above his eye. So he was kind of, thrown into the fire tonight. And he still has odd issues rebounding the ball, but he made a nice impact.
And Reds complimented him a ton about how hard he's been working, which in a season like this, it would have been very easy for Naheem McLeod to just kind of sit down and say, man, I can't wait till the season is over. I don't know what's next for Naheem McLeod after this year because he is a senior.
Yeah.
Who knows? But making the most of his minutes, that's what you like to see. So, again, he might not be making the biggest impact like Caroline thinks. Although Caroline, she's had plenty of thoughts about Naheem McLeod, about the coaching. But I still give Naheem McLeod a retrograde forecast.
Yes, sure. I think Naheem McLeod, that's a fair forecast to give to him. I think you got to give the guy some credit for what he's tried to do this season. I want to pivot to another big man, Max. I want to pivot to Eddie Lampkin, a guy who I think had a lot of expectation on him. He was out of all the transfers Adrian Autry grabbed up this season, he was the first one to fly off the page. He was the big name, and I think Eddie Lampkin, this season hasn't been sunny for Syracuse, but I think he's been the sunshine. He has been the sunshine for this team. He's done everything you could ask. Everything you could ask for Eddie Lampkin, he's delivered. He was hurt at the start of the year. He still played hard. I think tonight he played a really good game. There's nothing more I could have asked from Eddie Lampkin this season.
He has really, really shaped up from the beginning of the season. I think a lot of Syracuse fans looked at this guy to begin the year, especially in those early games when Red came out and said that he was not in good enough condition and was just not in the right basketball shape, and really wondered if there was so much recency bias going back to that Eddie Lampkin NCAA tournament run with Colorado, and if there was just so much recency bias or emphasis on those performances. but he has really shown why he was dominant in Colorado, putting up double-double after double-double with this Syracuse squad. So I don't think there's any other forecast you can give him besides Sonny.
No, and I think it's a shame that he's not on a better Syracuse team, because if he was, he'd be such a pivotal player, but he's doing all he can, and I think tonight you saw it with he had 2 really nice dunks where he got up there. I'm really impressed with Eddie Lampkin did, and it's unfortunate that this is it. He's also, I'm pretty sure he's out of eligibility right after this. You got to see Eddie Lampkin, but you didn't get to see the best version of him because the team around him just wasn't good enough.
I don't know.
And imagine if he had a point guard.
That would just be...
that connection would have been really,
it would have
really
been
good.
insane. I mean, Derek Coleman, that guy, called out Eddie Lampkin early in the year, a former Syracuse 44.
Yes.
Called out another Syracuse 44 and Eddie Lampkin. Lampkin stepped up to the plate ever since. It's been impressive.
And that comparison's crazy, I think. The 44 thing, that's just such a wild thing to throw at him.
And that's much more of a football thing than it is a basketball thing for Syracuse.
It really has nothing to do with the basketball. But Eddie Lampkin, I think, has been a real bright sunshine spot for this team. And I hope he finishes out this year as well as he's been playing all season long.
Trying to put a bow on his basketball career the best he possibly can. Hopefully gets an opportunity at the next level as well. Maybe not necessarily in the NBA, but potentially overseas. I think he's a guy that could be effective for another team going forward. Now, so we hit 2 bright spots in a row, at least kind of, with Naheem McLeod and Eddie Lampkin. We're going to finish up this little game of 5-man forecast. 5-player forecast, I should say. We're going to a player that, again, may not have had one of the biggest impacts on the court tonight, but has shown in bits and pieces that he really can be a force of nature for the Syracuse squad, and that is Kyle Cuff. Although these last couple of games, and even going back this last month or so, he has been ice cold. I mean, he has been just about as cold as my car when I get into it. It's been freezing. And I mean ice cold. There's a cold front coming in on Kyle Cuff. And I don't know what happened with sort of that domination we saw very early on, especially sort of toward the latter part of December, early part of January. Go back to that Boston College game, was really effective, really liked him.
Forest.
Loved him against UAlbany as well. But since then, hasn't really even come close to a double-digit performance. And a guy like Kyle Cuff, I actually think has a lot of potential, especially as maybe a shorter guy. He's not afraid to drive in.
No.
But had multiple times tonight where he was blocked going up for layups.
He was. And he also has an outside shot, which he showed against Boston College. He could knock down threes, but...
Hit one tonight as well.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, though, because at the end of the day, Kyle Cuff, I didn't expect him. When he got hot there, I thought maybe he could be an established role player off the bench. But surprise, surprise, just like everything else on this team, he couldn't be consistent. He can't be consistently reliable off the bench. The last time he had a double-digit performance scoring-wise was against Notre Dame, which was the 18th of January. So it's been a while for Kyle Cuff since he had a real memorable game. And Autry's given him the minutes, too. It's not like, where it was at the beginning of the year where Autry wasn't really putting him into the lineup. Autry has put trust into him, and he unfortunately has not delivered.
And I don't think something we haven't necessarily talked about a ton tonight was the fact that Jaquan Carlos, Kyle Cuff, and Lucas Taylor all had 4 fouls. So we're necessarily making it easy on Coach Autry either to decide which one to put in at which time, and all 3 of them kind of put up duds. No one had more than 6 points. That was Jaquan Carlos. Kyle Cuff finished with 5, 2 for 5 from the field, one of those being a 3-pointer, but just over this last span for Kyle Cuff, it's been very, very cold. That's why we got quarter zips on here in our Ocean Avenue studios to stay warm. That's why we're in the cozy warmness of our studio. But Kyle Cuff, unfortunately, Miami didn't warm him up.
No,
has to come back to cold Syracuse to take on North Carolina this weekend.
They're going to need him. They need someone to give him a spark because Elijah Moore, he's another player you could put even colder than Kyle Cuff. He had an awful performance tonight as well. So they need some kind of spark offensively, and I don't know where it's going to come from.
How does Syracuse heat up is the question. Yeah. North Carolina on the docket this weekend, but we're not just there yet. AJ and I still got to give our final words. We're taking the meteorology coats, right? Coats, suits,
yes.
Whatever, weatherman titles off. We never had them in the first place. That was 5-player forecast. and we'll tell you what's in our neck of the woods and our final words when we come back here on the Double Overtime on WAER.
Weekday mornings are a juggle, sometimes even a struggle. Morning Edition from NPR News eases you into your day and keeps you company through the chaos of a busy morning. Hear interviews that give you context on the day's biggest stories, along with reporting and updates on the latest breaking news. Stay on top of the world with Morning Edition every weekday.
Weekdays from 5 to 9 on 88.3 WAER.
Listening to the wings of a monarch butterfly. What a magical thought.
They arrive here on the Day of the Dead, which we celebrate here in Mexico, and a lot of the indigenous people believe that it's the souls of their ancestors that are returning, and it's very spiritual.
That's On Point with me, Meghna Chakrabarti.
From 7 to 8 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
The beauty of jazz is any time is a great time to experience new aspects of the musical genre and appreciate its rich history. WAER's HD2 channel is a dedicated source for jazz music 24 hours a day. Available to stream at WAER.org or on your HD radio. WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Lampkin tosses right to Cup. Up top for Chris Bell, back into the game for Syracuse. Lampkin spins from the far elbow, attacks Kidd, kicks near corner, Cup three, it's pure, and we are tied.
Syracuse falls to Miami. They were tied there briefly at the end of the second half, but it did not go the Orange way. They fall to the Hurricanes 91-84. We're on the air with you for just about 10 more minutes, so if you want to get any final thoughts in, that's what me and Max are about to do. Call us at 315-443-2011, or you can also text us 315-556-3929. We're also on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. That's where you can watch us, and you can watch us on YouTube as well at WAER Sports Talk. Max, we've really harped on the bad defense, the poor coaching maybe at times. Ian's harped on lack of focus. If you're going to put it all together in your final word, what are you putting it at?
I've said it a couple times tonight. I've been at a loss for words. I've just been up against a wall at this point because nothing I can say can really heal, help, hurt this squad anymore. Because where is there to go from here, AJ? There's really
ACC tournament.
Sure. But to that point, my final word is that Syracuse has reached rock bottom.
Yep.
And there's no other way to put it. Miami came into this game as one of the worst defenses in all of Power Conference basketball. All of it.
Yeah.
I believe they were just around that 340 mark, to be exact. There's only about 360 teams in college basketball. Yeah. They were 1-11 in ACC play, at risk of losing out and going 1-17, which would have been the worst record since Pitt lost every single ACC game back in 2017, in the 2017-2018 season. Syracuse not only lost to the worst team in the conference and one of the worst teams in the entire country tonight, they got outplayed,
out-hustled,
out-physicaled, and Ian mentioned it. They didn't have the focus.
Nope.
No drive to win. And to come down, you're playing college basketball, you're in Coral Gables, and you fall by nearly 10 points to a team that had no business, honestly, being on the same court as you.
No, and I think you're spot on with rock bottom because they weren't expected to beat Duke. Yeah, they got blown out by them. They weren't expected to beat them. Yeah, they got blown out by Clemson. You weren't expected to win that game. Syracuse was expected. I don't care what Vegas said. That line, when I looked at that line this afternoon, I was like, what? Miami's favored? Clearly Vegas knew something. But You were expected to win tonight. It's that simple. You
should have won tonight.
Mm-hmm. And it didn't happen.
Miami's closest win, besides the Notre Dame game a couple weeks ago, was to Presbyterian.
Yep.
We mentioned it. Their mascot is the Blue Hose.
What is that?
You are now in the conversation as the Blue
Otto
Hose.
is in a bad group right now.
It's the Orange, the Irish, and the Blue Hose are Miami's last 3 wins.
Yeah, it's bad. And that honestly transitions very nicely into my final word, which I like to keep it at one word: embarrassing. It's just flat out embarrassing that you could not handle an awful, awful Miami team. You let their best scorer, who, if you go on our Twitter in our pregame video, the one player we mentioned for the Hurricanes was Matthew Cleveland, because we're like, hey, this Cleveland guy having a few good performances. Syracuse,
killer.
You better keep a watchful eye on him, because he could go off. What happened? Sure, maybe he went off. He did. He was 10 of 13 from the field, and he had 32 points. That's unacceptable. Miami had one really good player, and Syracuse let him walk all over him, and that was the story of the game defensively. It was embarrassing. Embarrassing performance defensively. Autry rolled out a 3-2 defensive scheme to start. That didn't work. He went back to man. That didn't work either. It was wide open 3 after wide open 3. Miami, they didn't cruise because they're not a good team. They let Syracuse back into this game. Yeah, sure, Eddie Lampkin played good. J.J. Starling played good. They're not to blame, not at all. But there is just an embarrassing factor that these players have walked out of Miami, out of this arena tonight, losing this game, where it should have been a comfortable win. I know a lot of callers harped on it too. This is, it's an embarrassing moment for this program that is used to winning games, that is used to 20-win seasons, comfortable 20-plus win seasons. They are a far, far stretch away from that, and that is flat out embarrassing.
And the issue is you don't know where this team goes after this.
You don't.
You just keep playing the games.
Yep. And hope maybe you go on a little run. But there's not been.
But
nothing.
after losing to a team like Miami, you really ask yourself, are any of these games winnable?
No, and you've only had two winning streaks this year. You had the first 3 wins to start the year, which none of them were close. All of them were close. And then you beat Georgia Tech and you beat Boston College. That's only win streaks you've had all season long. Outside of that,
and I'd honestly make the argument that a winning streak is 3 games rather than just 2 games.
Yeah,
so
and you don't count the 3 at the start of the year.
The only official winning streak is Lemoyne, Colgate, and Youngstown State.
You should have beat those teams regardless.
Which Syracuse did almost lose to all three of those teams.
Which is embarrassing. Again, that is embarrassing. That was a clear precursor to what this season was going to entail. And unfortunately, it has tailed a lot of embarrassing losses, and none more than tonight.
Yeah, reality's just kind of set in for both for Syracuse fans. I think for the team, for Adrian Autry. I mean, really interested to hear his presser afterwards. We got some notes from Ian Nicholas, our play-by-play broadcaster, and how he was deflated. I mean, how could you not be deflated after that? Ian sounded deflated.
Yeah. And I think you want to go back to what Ian was saying. He, his tone, and he's watched this team for a long time, a year longer than we have, and each year he's seen this team get progressively worse. And I think, last year Autry, snuck out 20 wins, and we were all like, there it is, like this is a building block. That next block hasn't been there, and it just hasn't been there all season. And tonight was just an ugly, ugly loss.
But it's only a quad 3 loss.
Don't get me started with that. This was a quad 5 loss. I don't want to hear it. That doesn't. Last year, sure. People. I remember one of the double overtimes. Our fellow colleagues, I think it was Ethan Frank and Jack Gordon, were kind of getting upset with the whole quad system. This year, you can't even get upset with that stuff because it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, you can't even bring it into the conversation.
Nope, because they're that bad.
It doesn't matter if you don't even win any games that are related to quad or to anything related in the quadrant conversation.
If you care, Syracuse has one quad 2 win, and that was against Cal.
I believe this was their first quad 3 loss, if I'm not mistaken, though.
It was their second. Georgetown was their first.
Oh, yes, you're right. That was their worst loss of the season up till now, which is this is now their worst
absolutely.
loss.
Yeah, I mean, Miami in the net rankings is 225. So that's bad.
Really?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell after we just talked about how bad this loss was for 2 hours.
That puts a bow on it, and how awful this Syracuse performance was tonight. It was disappointing. We thought maybe we would be talking about a little bit of a different storyline tonight, Max, but unfortunately that wasn't the case.
We really did.
It wasn't the case at all.
We'll see if anyone gets to talk about this team on a winning note again this year.
If you want to talk about a winning note, I don't know if it will come Saturday. North Carolina, they've struggled. It hasn't been a great year for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. Syracuse beat North Carolina last year. Nearly beat them a couple years ago.
Yeah.
The Tar Heels seem to struggle in the Dome for some reason.
Yeah.
And they've kind of struggled all year just in general. Don't know how you do it with the ACC preseason player of the year in R.J. Davis and a guy like Elliot Cadeau, but that's beside me. That's Hubert Davis' problem.
It hasn't worked out for Syracuse this season, but also, as you were saying, Max, hasn't really gone North Carolina's way. It's going to be a desperate Tar Heels team entering the Dome on Saturday. Tip-off for that one's at 6 p.m. McClurg Remodeling countdown to tip-off at 5:30. The double overtime goes till 10 o'clock. Our friends Alex Ramol and Skylar Wilkes. You could call in for that one and get their thoughts after the game. But a team that is on the up and up, Max, is the men's lacrosse team. They have a huge game Saturday against number 4 Maryland. That one starts at 2 p.m. McClurg Remodeling countdown to face-off is at 1:30. Double overtime goes to 5:30. Our friends Dan Papillo and Nathaniel Cunningham, you can get their thoughts after the game. Lacrosse you can get happy about.
Just some history for you. Syracuse hasn't won down in College Park since 1982, so it would be an historic win for the Orange.
That would be a massive win for Gary Gates' group. Be sure to listen to the Ostrom Avenue podcast. They've got plenty of interviews right now on this lacrosse team from coaches, and lacrosse analysis as well. You can get that wherever you get your podcast.
I'm listening to that on the plane tomorrow.
Yes. Well, we thank you for listening to the Double Overtime site on WAR Syracuse. Thank you to our producer, Jared Valentine, our engineer, Skylar Wilkes, reporter, Ian Nicholas, our desk, Jack DiNapoli, Timmy Weiss, and Dan Schaum. For me and Max Skiffer, that's all from tonight. Syracuse falls to Miami.